Hey, welcome everybody to Spin Legal this evening. This is I'm Peter Giblett and she's Angela Browne. Hey, morning Angela. How are you? Evening Angela. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. So the question we have tonight, we're going to be discussing is how do I know if I'm eligible for ODSP? And that's actually a good question raised by somebody who was on our crew, Alicia Cool, and Dave, thank you for your cool answers.
Yeah, and Alicia actually watches these Spin Legal episodes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's first of all introduce a bit of advertising. If you need to contact us at Invictus Legal, you can do so at 905-688-5598. Email Angela on Angela at weareinvictus.legal or myself on Peter at weareinvictus.legal. You can always go to our website, weareinvictus.legal. There you go. Okay, so here's the big question of the day. How do I know if I'm eligible for ODSP? And that's, it's an interesting question because there's a lot of seriousness you have to go into before if you are eligible, you have to be, it's quite a serious question, isn't it?
Yeah, because every type of disability program that's out there has a certain eligibility. In Ontario or anywhere in Canada, they have different disability programs for each province. Like in Alberta, they had something called AISH. I think they're trying to change it into something else. And they have the People with Disabilities program in BC. They have another program in Saskatchewan, but in Ontario, we have ODSP, which is the Ontario Disability Support Program. Yeah, they used to have these pickets where it said Ontario is deliberately starving people. So they use ODSP.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that's a human rights abuse there.
Yeah, but anyways, ODSP is a program that was created in 1997 and proclaimed in 1998 as a result of Bill 142 at the time, under that government at the time that was in power, and it was put as a Social Assistance Reform Act. Okay, so they put together ODSP, and that was moved away from its predecessor, which was the Family Benefits Act.
Okay.
So basically, some people have been moved over from ODSP who were on family benefits because they've always been on family benefits and they never got off family benefits. But for people who afterwards who become disabled.
Yeah, but if I become disabled today, I'm not going to be applying for family benefits.
No, you apply for ODSP.
Yeah.
Because they've changed that. They made a new program. The other one is Ontario Works, which is what used to be called General Welfare Assistance Act, General Welfare Assistance, but it's now Ontario Works. Okay. I don't like to say Ontario doesn't work, but
Ooh, another lawsuit there. I don't know. You're up against this, right?
But there's a lot of different things, when people had different things, and yes, at any time, most people can be vulnerable where they might have to find some support, whether it's unemployment insurance, whether it's CPP disability, ODSP disability, or even long-term disability through work, like your long-term disability through Manulife or Sun Life.
Yeah.
There's different ways of getting disability through different types of criteria.
And I guess the ODSP, is that somewhat like an insurance company? You talked about Manulife just a moment ago, because Manulife, it would be applicable if the company that you worked for had a Manulife policy and they picked up the tab if you became disabled.
Yeah, they would.
Presumably there's rules for things.
They have certain rules, and the rules are different for everyone. Like on Manulife, if you can't do your own occupation, which means your own occupation or similar comparable occupations to your own occupation, then you can go on it for up to 2 years, depending on the type of contract you have. And then after that, they either put you on what they call any occupation, and sometimes they would.
So own occupation own occupation means that if you're an engineer or a computer programmer or something, you might well be on a salary, let's say for argument's sake, 85 to 110, let's say, thousand,
Yeah.
and you might be in that wage bracket, and you'd therefore be paid within that wage bracket.
Yeah. So what happens on your own occupation, they'll pay you like 70 to 80%. Sometimes it's down as low as 60%, depending on the plan that you pay for. And when you're working and when you're well, you're paying for this program.
Yeah.
It's like insurance. You have house insurance, you have auto insurance, so if something happens, the insurance will kick in.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
for ODSP, this is for people who don't have the access to that type of insurance.
Yeah, ODSP is different because you don't have to. In fact, whether you've got any benefit plan or not, your ODSP would apply.
Yeah, it's it's like what you go to, what they call as you have to go to the last resort benefit.
And in some respects, the question about whether, do you know if you're eligible for ODSP? Well, I know that you've said on a number of occasions, hey, try not to go on ODSP if at all possible.
I do that because there's a lot of issues with ODSP, but that's not what I'm going to be covering for today.
Yeah.
There are some people who do need to be on ODSP and they want to get on it. And it might be in their interest at least to be on it for a while until they can recover enough. And there's many people I know who are on it. And the thing what happens is, say for instance, you're in a situation you can no longer work and you're at home and you've been gone on to general welfare for a little while and you're not able to get work because of your disability. And the problem with general welfare is most of the people who are on Ontario Works are people who are either waiting to become on ODSP or people who would otherwise be eligible but have not been found eligible for ODSP because of a lot of issues. So
there are some eligibility. There are some basic eligibility rules that basically, like, you have to be now 18 years of age, you have to be an Ontario resident, and you must
meet the program.
Meet the program's definition of a person with a disability.
And I'm just reading you from legislation, which is in the legislation, what the test is that you have to meet is that being a person with a disability means you have a substantial mental or physical impairment that is continuous or recurrent. So if you have an episodic disability, it's the same thing. So you can still qualify and is expected to last 1 year or more. And it is a direct and cumulative effect of your impairment results in substantial restriction in your ability to work, care for yourself, or take part in community life.
Okay.
Your impairment and its likely duration and restrictions have been verified by an approved healthcare professional. Depending on the type of disability, you can go to an eye doctor if you're talking about a visual impairment or optometrist. You can go to just a general physician or a psychiatrist or even a clinical psychologist. I think.
So if I were to trip over and bang my knee and was out of work for six weeks, it wouldn't qualify.
No. You have to have at least a year. They want you on a duration where the disability is likely to last a year or more. Yeah. Okay, so like say if you got into a car accident, many people are disabled for a year or more following a car accident. And the insurance that you get from the car accident doesn't always pay, and might have run out at a certain point, and then you have to go turn into ODSP.
There are policies associated with car insurance policies. There are also accident insurance benefits policies that you can buy on the open market.
Yeah, they have things like SABs, which is something that I think they were trying to make it so people could try to save on their car insurance by not buying into the SABs. And no, don't do that because if you get into a car accident, you'd be sorry
Yeah.
because you won't be getting compensation and certain things. Okay,
But
but
tell
there
me,
is treatment available where you can get treatment for up to a certain amount, and then there's income replacement.
yeah. Well, tell me about the next one. You must demonstrate financial need.
Yeah, you must demonstrate financial need. In other words, you have to show that you're poor enough to qualify for ODSP. Like you must not have, if you're a single person, you must not have
So,
more than $40,000 in
yeah.
resources or
So if
in
I,
the bank savings, retirement income, anything like that. And you also, in terms of your daily budget, because ODSP sets certain amount of rates, and if the amount of money that you receive in a month from any source, whether it's old age pension, whether it's some your partner's income, your working employment income, or whatever, if that exceeds what the ODSP total budget would be, then you would not be eligible either. But
okay,
usually
so
people don't
if
have.
I were to be involved in a traffic accident and couldn't, were ending up as paraplegic, I might qualify.
Yep, you might qualify. Okay? And it also depends, you might actually get catastrophic.
And I was single, and
Yeah,
single, didn't have any, didn't well. Even if I had dependents, that would probably increase the need for qualification. But if I wasn't with a partner or wasn't married, that if I was with a partner or married, that would mean that I'd probably be less likely to get ODSP if they were on
yeah.
a good
Yeah,
rate.
especially if the partner is working and
Yeah,
receiving an income. And
if
they
they
don't
were,
even have to receive very much. And this is
yeah,
not, and this is something that's very controversial
yeah.
and has been actually this year, a lot of people are starting to become alert to this and raising this as an issue, including in legislative assemblies, even in court, even in human rights tribunals. People are raising this issue. And it's very important because gives the person with the disability a sense of financial
Yeah.
independence. Right?
Okay, so there's another aspect to this. Your assets must not exceed program limits. I
Yeah, and
believe it's
assets are
40,000.
defined.
Yeah,
Okay?
I believe that's 40,000 if you're
Yeah,
single.
$40,000 in what they call liquid assets. Okay? Your
So if
assets are
I've got
not
a
liquid.
pension,
Like if you can't take them out until you're 55 and you're now 30 years old, that's not considered part of your liquid assets.
so a pension or something like that,
Yeah.
RRSP, I wouldn't be able to touch it.
Well, it depends on if it's locked in or not. If it's locked in, then they can't touch it. But
Okay,
if it's something you can access, they'll tell you to drain it all.
okay. And so essentially, so let's say that, for example, my favorite auntie died and she left me $40,000, and I
Mhm.
was single, etc. So I'm at the limit. Basically, I'd be told to spend it all before I get a penny.
No, no. Basically, what happens is an inheritance is treated differently. Like you could put it into an inheritance trust or put it into another account where that is just left as an inheritance. Okay? And there's some rules about that. You can put it into different accounts up to $100,000 to do that. Okay? And then, or you can put it into something like where you're purchasing a property, a down price.
Yeah,
A house.
I was just about to
Yeah.
ask about that. So
Yeah, so
if I
they're
buy,
not too worried if you buy a house. They're not too
yeah.
worried about it. But they're worried about what they're worried about is that they have secret millionaires out there who want to go collect ODSP.
Okay, so let's say, for argument's sake, that I inherited 500,000 from my favorite auntie, and I was single, etc. But I put that into into a house, a townhouse, that was going to give me what I needed for for the rest of my life.
Hmm. You
Right?
could.
That
You
would be
could.
an acceptable form
Yeah,
of
there is
spending.
a certain period of time you have to have that done.
Yeah.
And they will tell you that
Oh,
when you go in there,
I
that you
get it.
have to clear that up and then put it into a house. What they do is you have to put it into what's called an exempt asset. Your house is an exempt asset. A vehicle, your first vehicle is an exempt asset. certain other types of things that are for disability purposes are an exempt asset. Like say if you
Yeah.
had to buy a new wheelchair, things like
But it-
that.
Okay, so for example, if I had, therefore I was living single when I was, hey, I built a collection of classic motor cars, 15 classic motor cars that I drove once in a while. Only the first one would be an exempt asset.
Yep. The other, if there's a second car, and you have a household where there's more than one person, but somebody else in the household requires a vehicle, for work or health, medical appointments, then the vehicle could be worth up, I think it's 15,000. So it could be up to two vehicles if you have more than one person in the household.
Yeah,
But
but if I was just,
yeah,
if I, before becoming injured,
yeah,
I was a car collector, I'd probably be required to sell my assets.
there could be, yeah. And this is something that's been very because
It's
I
very
don't think people should
controversial.
have to make themselves poor in
Yeah, that's
order
very
to,
controversial
yeah,
because when you think about it, a disabled person, I've often used that two people on good salaries, let's say two computer programmers on 80 to 110,000, who are good in a good position. They're husband and wife there, or husband and wife, or wife, it doesn't matter. They're in a relationship, and one of them gets injured by in a traffic accident. That could be disastrous for the both of them, can't it?
absolutely. Because what happens is outside of the insurance policy that may pay for some of the income replacement, that there could, and if that stops paying after a while, that the person who's still working ends up having to support both of them,
Yeah.
including that person's disability related costs.
And the irony, of course, is, and the reason why I used a higher salary and a higher role position is because obviously people in those higher salaries and higher role positions often have got higher expenses as well going alongside it.
Yeah, it's terms of living their livelihood
Yeah.
or whatever. Their cost of living might be different. But to have to go down and have to live in like a one-bedroom house when you used to have a six-bedroom house and you have a nice pool in your backyard and you had three cars and you drove around or took vacations a couple times a year, that might have been what you could afford before. But even with the one person still working and even with some insurance benefits, which they do, most of the time they don't exceed $400 a week unless you have the optimum, which you can claim up to $1,000 a week.
Yeah.
But this is a very, very serious situation that puts people in. And this is stuff that's old, like ODSP rates. Like you might be able to live on the cost of living back in the 70s or the 80s.
Okay.
But now it's more and more where you have where costs are behind. Because if you're a single person, your housing costs are like 560. They only allow that for 560 of your total housing costs.
Yeah.
So many of them try to move into subsidized housing, and I think we had a presentation one time. You can wait 20 years for subsidized housing. So what do you do in the meantime? Well, your rent is like $2,000 a month. So this is a very, very serious situation that needs to be reviewed.
Okay. Here's a question in relation to this: is every type of disability eligible?
Every type of disability.
There's a few that I've listed here.
There's no specific disability that says, okay, if I have mental schizophrenia, then I qualify, or if I have lung condition, I qualify. No, it doesn't say that. It's how the disability affects you. Like as I stated in the eligibility criteria, it has to be a direct and cumulative effect where there's a substantial restriction in your ability to work, care for yourself, or take part in community life.
Yeah.
Some
So,
people
for
think
example, here.
ODSP, so they don't try to restrict people from working on ODSP, but there are provisions where people can work and still get ODSP.
So, for example, here it says musculoskeletal injury, right, on this list here. I may have a musculoskeletal injury, but it may not be cumulative enough to actually warrant ODSP.
Mhm. Like, for example, for substantial, like ability to work is known, but in self-care, are you able to shower? Are you able to care for yourself? Are you able to get around to deal with appointments? Are you able to handle your banking,
Well, the
your
answer
financial
may,
management? There's a lot of different things that are put on the block where you're looking at your functional abilities. Okay?
okay,
And
so
people
take
with
that.
disabilities may not be able to do all of that.
Okay, so take that musculoskeletal for a reason. I did that for a reason. And you said you must be able to shower. Well, I may well be able to shower if I got such an injury. I may well be able to shower. I may well be able to look after myself. But it might take, instead of it taking me 15 to 20 minutes to prepare breakfast, to have a shower, prepare breakfast, it might take me 2 hours.
Yeah, but this is where you could argue that for ODSP. Hey, and that also gets you into the category of what's called a disability tax credit, which is a federal, but it has a more restrictive definition.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's actually an interesting question, because I'd expect everybody who was on ODSP to be eligible for federal tax.
absolutely. They should, but they don't want to do that because they want to keep some people or most people on ODSP away from the Canada Disability Benefit, even though all people on ODSP are poor.
Yeah.
And it's discriminatory. I think that there could be some argument similar to the Bull versus the director of ODSP, which was a decision that was made by the Human Rights Tribunal, and for the special diet, because at one time they had the special diet allowance, which is given to some people on ODSP or on Ontario Works, where people can get extra money on top of their base benefit to help feed themselves for, like, say, if you got a health condition that you need specific food. So they did this, and at one time the government just said, nope, we're cutting it down to only so many disabilities that we're going to give special diet for. So they took them to the Human Rights Tribunal, and this was like a multiple case that was heard.
And again, hey, I might be a person with I might be a person with a nervous system disorder, and my belief system might well be that if I take, that there might well be some alternative medicine out there that if I take dock leaves, that will cure me of my system. I'm putting it up there as that's completely fake, of course, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
There might be some alternative medicine that I believe in that will deal with it. Surely I should be allowed that alternative medicine.
Not really. ODSPs, as far as I know, I don't think they would provide for that. Same as they don't provide for podiatry, like for people with foot problems. They don't provide. They don't directly provide for dentures if you lose all your teeth. Although they give dental care for people, they don't provide for. There's a few things they don't provide for, and it's just like, why? Why?
I find that disturbing, because if, for example, if they provide dental care, why don't they provide dentures if you lose all your teeth?
Yeah, because basically they go to the municipality, and the municipality makes a decision if they're going to fund a program for dental care. They put it under discretionary benefits, and yes, some places, yeah, you just go there and they do it, and some places have a program through United Way or wherever you are.
Yeah.
So I mean, come on, guys, let's be consistent here.
So what you're saying is, if I happen to live in Windsor and they have a United Way funded program, I might get my dentures. Where if I happen to live in Oshawa and they don't have such a program, tough luck.
Yep, they had a program one time called Brushed Aside. I don't even know if they have that anymore. Those are for people who have complicated dental issues that are not covered by insurance, even if they have insurance, and are not covered by ODSP, even if they have ODSP dental. And they were giving people some support through that program. I don't know if they have that yet, but it's something that was recognized at one time that people need this type of help. And what we have available isn't always going to provide for it. But that was something on a different program. But These
Okay.
are things that I help people navigate if they get onto a program. I help people navigate these types of systems so
Okay.
they can get the maximum benefits that they would be entitled to.
So we've been talking there about largely about physical disabilities. What about psychological disabilities or mental disabilities?
Yeah, mental health disabilities qualify. People can get on it, even if it's your only disability is a psychological disability. At one time, before
Huh.
now, there was back in 2006, I believe, uh, people whose only problem was drug addiction or alcoholism, they were not allowed to qualify for ODSP. But then somebody took it and they took it all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. And the Supreme Court of Canada said it's a disability under the Human Rights Code. So why are you not allowing the whole law to be examined? This was a case called Tranchamontaine.
Yeah.
And this got.
But a lot of people would disagree with that you should be able to get ODSP as an alcoholic.
See, the thing is, what is that if you have an addiction to alcohol, not because you just drink. Okay? There's a difference between an addiction and somebody who just drinks a lot.
Yeah.
Okay? If you meet anybody in college or university, all the young people, a lot of them go out and drink, and they overdrink. Okay, we all know.
And I think
that's not alcoholism. That's just craziness, youthful stupidity.
And I think there's a difference between, and somebody who's an alcoholic. I was going to say registered alcoholic, but there's no such thing. Somebody who's an alcoholic who might well be, for example, part of a 12-step program, AA or something of that nature, who's in a continuing recovery situation, who, let's admit it, sometimes may fall off the wagon from time to time, and addictions are like that anyway.
And addictions, but people have a hard time understanding is that addiction. People don't wake up one day and say, "Oh, I'm going to become a crack addict today." Hey, people don't make these decisions.
Exactly. And you could take crack all your life and never be addicted to it.
Yeah, there are people who don't have an addictive personality, like myself, for example. I can sit at a bar and I can have 8 beers, if I want to. And then the next week I can meet with friends at a bar and not have anything, just have ginger ale while they're drinking. It doesn't matter. I don't need it. I don't have to. Hey, but right now these days I'm what you call a very moderate drinker. I hardly drink anymore anyways, but never been addicted to anything. Hey, but there are people who it's a genetic component. They found that some people, some people whose families where there was family members, like an immediate family member, has addiction issues, and it could be passed down, but it doesn't necessarily pass down. Okay? And there's other people too who see somebody in their family who suffers from addictions, and they see the consequences that person been through, so they decide I am going to abstain completely, and they can do that. Okay.
What about things like ADHD?
ADHD is something that you would have to be evaluated for, but people are on ODSP for ADHD. Does it affect their life? Does it affect their ability to work?
Yeah. So alongside anybody else who has to go and get you have to go get evaluated, which means you've got to have a doctor's say so. It's not just, hey, Angela, I'm on ADHD, get me benefits.
That's like everybody's saying that everybody's on the autistic spectrum now, right? So they're all deciding that they got Asperger's or they're on the autistic spectrum. But the thing is, most of these people are not disabled. There are people like ADHD. Bill Gates was suggested to have ADHD. Other people, I think Elon Musk even. Okay? The way he acts, I think he's got ADHD. But these people are not disabled by it. They've somehow worked around it and been able to accommodate the issue.
I believe, looking at having seen several interviews with Bill Gates on TV, and the way that he acts the same way as my mother acts, I believe he's probably Asperger's, not ADHD.
Yeah, he's got something because but But it doesn't
could be wrong.
necessarily disable. But there are people who are severely disabled by it,
And
or they lack social skills. They don't come out of themselves. They cannot communicate very well. Eh?
yeah, and part of the problem with things like Asperger's, dyslexia, ADHD, autism, those ones that some of those mental disorders, they may be a disorder that means that you cannot read and write, or here have difficulties reading and writing. For certain people, that is very true, and many, some autistic people have major problems reading and writing, and other autistic people have no problem at all. Some dyslexic people have major problems reading and writing, and others have no problem at all. After training, after years of training, etc. And but typically, most people who are on that spectrum tend to end up not being disabled in the traditional sense. They can still go to work. They can do whether they're good at writing or not. They can still go and work in a factory. They can still sign their name on a timesheet. They can still do the basic, a lot of the most basic things in life. They're not disabled in the normal sense of the word.
Yeah, because the thing is, ability to work is a lot more than just being able to pick up a hammer and hit a nail, or to go and to operate a cash register or sit at a computer. There's a lot of testing. Like, I worked in community mental health for many years, and community mental health is very, very different than what you call psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is different because that psychotherapy treats people who have mental health or personality disorders.
Yeah.
And they try to treat you to get better or to socialize better. But in community mental health, what we did is we worked with people who have mental health problems, and we helped them adapt so they can work, so they can live in a place functionally and know how to pay their rent on time and not destroy the place. So help people get along with us despite their disability. And many of them also go for therapy too, where they're also learning how to be better parents, or how to socialize, how to get over their traumas from childhood or something. So these are things that I've often had to do. And in terms of workplace, there's something called psychosocial rehabilitation. And community mental health is very much involved in psychosocial rehabilitation. I've been at conferences for this sort of thing, and I presented on these issues about what it means to be able to work. And basically, there's nobody in the world that can say, you over there can work and you over there cannot work. There's very much a discrepancy.
And part of the challenge with something like what we're talking dyslexia, etc., and that spectrum, is part of the challenge there is some people go from being brilliant in one week and being absolute fools in another week. Right. It's a fact of life. It does happen to dyslexic people, being one of them, I know. Right. And being in a family of dyslexic and Asperger's, it's something I don't know a little bit about. I don't know much about many other medical conditions, but that one I have some knowledge about.
Yeah, I have a full knowledge of a lot of them because I've had to work with people with various things. But these things usually, if you can get a diagnosis and put that together, and again, it has to be verified by a professional.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why the third part of it is that you have to be verified by a professional. You can't just go in there and says, oh, I'm on the autism spectrum, so I should be qualified for ODSP. Okay, who diagnosed you? I said, oh, I did. I read about it on the internet and I diagnosed myself. You can't do that. Okay, it has to be through a proper professional who has the knowledge about these conditions and can probably put you in that category. And then on top of that, you have to show how this condition affects your abilities to work, function in the community, or care for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Another question: blindness.
Blind people can get it under family benefits. If you are blind and beyond a certain point, you automatically got it.
Okay. So, is there anything, because obviously, again, you have to prove you're blind in relation to.
Yeah, there is testing of what's called
testing.
legal blindness, like
Yeah.
CNIB. They work on a definition of legal blindness. And if you meet that category, can be considered legally blind. I've worked with people who are blind. I had clients who are blind and who've had some significant difficulties because of their blindness and their needs to accommodate and things that have happened to them as a result of their sight loss. But this is a thing that that if you have that and you are not working or unable to work because of blindness, yes, you would get ODSP.
Okay. All right. Moving on to another question. If you're one of these people that needs to be permanently medicated, does that hinder your rights to for eligibility?
Nope, nope. They want to know what you're doing for treatment. There's some people out there, like when this ODSP was first being drafted and first being legislated. There were a group of people, we call them the anti-psychiatry types of people in the medical community, people who were patients or who are former patients of psychiatric facilities, and I guess they fell out of love with psychiatry, and they decided that there's no such thing as mental illness and blah blah blah. But at the same time, they couldn't work. They were functionally impaired. And many of them at that point, when they were at that table, we talked about it. And one person said, I don't want to have to go to a psychiatrist and be forced to be medicated to stay on it.
Okay,
And no, they don't have any conditions on it. Although in the States, they used to require people to take medicine. And I think that's a human rights issue.
Okay, so essentially, you could be on ODSP even if you can run for the bus without medication.
Right, right. Yeah, and we've talked about this, but there are other ways of determining a person's disablement.
Well, I would imagine
on a medication.
Yeah, there has to be a lot of the doctors would have to write a lot of notes.
Yep, exactly. Like sometimes for certain types of conditions, these could be complicated, where you might have to see many different specialists. Like for things like Lyme disease, we apparently don't have proper diagnostic treatment in Canada.
Okay.
So this person that I was dealing with had to go to the US, and they got facilities in the US that will positively diagnose you with Lyme disease, and they even have some treatment options for people.
Okay.
But here in Canada, we didn't have it, at least at that time. I don't know if we do now, but at least at that time we didn't. So we had to go through and we had to explain what the person's journey was like in order to arrive at what they've been diagnosed with.
Okay. So here's a question for you. So you put all your claim together. You put your medical conditions. You've got the doctor's report. You filled in all of the questions on the form, and you've given a whole wad of things. So what happens if your claim's rejected?
Okay, so you apply to ODSP. You go to something called the Disability Adjudication Unit.
Mm-hmm.
This is a part of the government that's separate from ODSP, but it's within ODSP. They're a group of people who only look at claims, and they have a checklist about what comes in, and they decide whether you meet the criteria or not.
Is it
If you don't meet the criteria, they'll send you a letter saying you're not a person with a disability. And yes, you could file for what's called an internal review, because many times you don't give them enough information medically, or you require something more specifically addressing something. And basically, as a legal professional, when I do this, they will send me a letter, and then there'll be something attached to it saying about why they think my client is not meeting the criteria. So quite often, then after the internal review process, if you're still rejected, then you can go to something called the Social Benefits Tribunal, which is a special tribunal that deal only with issues handling OW and ODSP.
Do do you have a feeling, because I'm only asking this question because there's a feeling out there that there are a large number of people who get rejected when they're applying for ODSP. Do you have a feeling about how large a percentage that is?
There are basically people can get approved the first time on their own at about 30 to 40% of the time. And they appeal it and they have representation, they get approved about 80% to 90% of the time. Okay, but it depends also on a lot of factors. Okay, I've had difficulties with some cases because they don't have medical doctors. So what I do is there are medical services that can help people with that. Okay, like there's a group called Reach Niagara, which provides medical services for people, as well as Quest on Queenston Street, where they also see people who may be homeless and may be without a family physician. So there's a lot of different types of things where we can refer people to get that type of assessment done.
Okay, so a large portion of this is going to be about what your doctor's going to say.
Yep.
If you don't have a doctor, that makes things quite awkward.
It makes it awkward. And basically, when I go and get people on, I only lost 2 cases in my lifetime, and I've represented lots.
Okay. So if people are rejected from ODSP, they're primarily for failing to meet, is it for failing to meet the definition of a person with disability, or is it not meeting the financial requirements?
If they don't meet the financial requirements, they don't get a disability determination package.
Okay.
So say if you went to ODSP and said, I want to apply, and these are individual referrals.
Yeah, and how much does your
individual referral, they'll set you up with a financial assessment first.
Okay.
So you got to bring in your bank statements, everything else, to show what kind of finances you have. And if you're working, your pay stubs. So that kind of thing. So then they will evaluate it. And that if you meet the financial criteria, then they say, okay, then they give you a disability determination package. Then this you take to your doctor to have it filled out.
Okay.
And they have a certain amount of days.
So
I think it's 90 days, I think.
It's a 2-stage process, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay? Because they only want to send people out. They don't want to send the millionaires who are claiming disability.
Well, and most of the people who might well be financial eligibility, and we're not generally talking about people who are millionaires, but
No.
I guess the issue is that, for example,
a lot of poverty out there.
Yeah, if you had an accident or something like that, the financial eligibility question comes up because of the fact that your partner may or may not have enough, be deemed as having enough money to support you.
Yeah, exactly. They will take your spouse's income at the same time as giving you a boost in your total budget. Okay. So say, for instance, instead of giving you 1408, which I think is the present amount, and then they might give you 1800 or 1900 with your spouse. Okay. So, but then your spouse's income affects the 18 or 1900 that you would get with the two of you. Okay. So this is how the system works, and it's done through a computer system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So they input all the stuff into the computer system, and the computer system determines basically financial eligibility. And most of the time, they're not too bad. I've never had to deal with financial eligibility, but sometimes we do have to prove things, because sometimes a person would look at it, they'll find that you own 14 different cars, and they're kind of going to wonder why you own 14 different cars, when in fact you've actually scrapped 13 of them.
Yeah.
And you just didn't bother to do anything about it. Okay? And you only have one vehicle. Okay? So, I mean, these are things that you would have to explain. Okay?
Yeah.
That happened to a case of mine.
Oh, you mean when you mean by you have 14 different cars, the fact that you have 14 different ones registered on at MTO,
yeah,
and you never ended up taking the license away, you've never refunded the license plate, etc.
Yeah, like the people just didn't deregister it or whatever it is that they do when they send it to the scrapyard.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of thing, like, these things have to be considered. And then there's different things. If you work, self-employment, they want your income taxes for the last year.
It seems it seems as if they go over the top and actually want to know a lot of personal details.
They do, and it could be very intrusive for some people,
Yeah.
particularly if you have a partner and the partner's working and they're not disabled. That I find offensive. Why do they want to go into the partner's RSP and tell them to drain everything?
Yeah.
But they do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But this is something that has to be constantly fought for. And the sad thing about it is people with disabilities on their own don't have power, don't have a lot of clout, they don't have a lot of say. When you get the mega bucks going in and they'll pay for people like Turning Point USA to go out and tell people and debate people in public on different issues, they get millions to start with. Hey, God, I'd like to have millions. And yes, we could do a lot of stuff about that kind of stuff. Right? But unfortunately, this kind of stuff is not what these mega sources want to fund.
Yeah.
Right? So we do have legal aid clinics that take on some things, but they're limited in what they can take on. We also have an income security advocacy clinic, which takes on both legal cases as well as political policy type stuff, where they do that, and there's lobbying that's taking place. And then there's occasional things that I take on and I challenge, and I've participated in the special diet stuff where I've put cases forward. I've also participated in the medical travel stuff.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things I will put forward on things and make arguments because the thing is, what I want to see is I want to aspire to fairness so that people with disabilities who are on ODSP are treated fairly in terms of their non-disabled counterparts.
So it would be fair to say that ODSP is an imperfect system.
Yeah, it's an imperfect system, and it's constantly, and I don't know why you have to set up a system where you're effectively capping the income of people that they could make. Hey, I mean, mind you, most people on ODSP are not going to work. Hey, but I guess they're worried that somebody might be making millions of dollars and still collect ODSP, which is like really a fallacy. Hey,
Yeah.
people go there because they have a hard time working. But if they can try to get themselves at least out of poverty, that would be a real blessing.
Well, I always thought about things like the function, of course, about ODSP, this Ontario Disability Support Program. I'm thinking to myself, well, that the person I described who had an accident and therefore can no longer walk, etc., now they've got support which will help them get like a wheelchair or something.
Yeah. And then they can do a desk job or something, if depending on their skills or education. Okay? And there's some things that they've done over the years that have improved. Like, for example, if you're in receipt of ODSP and you're receiving child support because you're raising kids and that are under 18, and then your spouse is separated from you and they're sending you child support, it used to be used against you by dollar for dollar taken off your ODSP, but they don't do that anymore.
That's right.
Nor does the child benefit be taken away either.
Okay. So in one sentence, how can ODSP, how should ODSP change for the better?
Give people more money, because most people are living in deep poverty who are on it. And especially pay attention to the shelter costs, because people can't afford to live. They can't afford the rent.
Yeah.
Okay? And this is a very serious issue that's faced. That's why we've got a lot of tent cities out there. And the other thing is that they have to start letting people marry.
And shelters
have ODSP, your full ODSP, without considering your partner's income.
Yeah. Shelter is got to be one of the biggest problems, because I believe the shelter allowance is $871, if I remember correctly. And when you think about it, that many, a 2-bedroom apartment's going to cost you $2,200, $2,500, $3,000 in Toronto.
$580 or something like that.
Sorry?
For a single person.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you got a couple, it goes up to, I think, 700 and something.
Yeah.
Okay. I forget what the actual amount.
I think it was 781 for some reason.
I never pay attention to that. But however, it's not enough. It's not enough. And I think there should be some indexing for shelter. For the shelter portion. And then also have, if those people are receiving the special diet, that should also be indexed to inflation. ODSP is now indexed to inflation every July. Okay, so if you have an inflation year of 5%, ODSP goes up by 5%. Okay, so they do that in July.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. And actually, Doug Ford put that in. So, I mean, there's some things that Doug Ford did that were not bad. Okay, but like anything else, it's very hard to do this unless you've actually worked it or you walked in the shoes of the people who are on it. Okay,
Yeah.
but sometimes we can be persuasive and get a few things. So Doug Ford, he likes to see a lot more people working. Okay, but in order to get more people working, stop capping people's incomes.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I think is you stop capping people's incomes, particularly partners, and allow people on benefits to actually get married or stay married.
Exactly, without affecting their income.
All right.
And the thing is, and also the nice thing about it too is that if you have a partner and you're on ODSP, that partner also benefits from the healthcare stuff that ODSP provides.
All right.
So if your partner's working and not disabled, but say for instance they need medication for diabetes because they happen to be diabetic, okay, your ODSP benefits will cover that person's medications.
All right. I think we've kind of come to the end of where we are right now on the ODSP, and just remains for me to basically say, hey, if you are if you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so at 905-688-5598. Email Angela on angela@weareinvictus.legal, or me on peter@weareinvictus.legal. And our website is weareinvictus.legal. And to finalize,
and what you heard today on Spin Legal is, whether on this show or others in a series, this is not legal advice. If you need legal advice on ODSP or anything else, landlord, tenant, small claims, or anything else, please contact a paralegal or a lawyer. We'd love you to come to Invictus Legal, and you're welcome to do so. But in any case, just go to a paralegal or a lawyer, and they will discuss your situation as it specifically applies to you.
Okay. And I do thank you for being here today. We're going to be covering, what was our topic for next week? Our topic for next week is going to be tenant rights regarding disability access to apartments.
Yeah, disability accommodations.
Yeah. All right.
Because landlords don't realize that they are also a provider of housing, and they also have to follow this little inconvenience called the Ontario Human Rights Code.
All right.
We'll talk about that next week.
We'll talk about that next week, and have a safe week, everybody. And, work and enjoy yourself. Work hard and enjoy yourself. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.